Hi, everyone. This is Michele Graglia.
This is Marianne Hogan.
Hi, I'm Adrian McDonald.
I'm Katie Asmith.
Hi, this is Anthony Gasals.
Hi, my name is Meg Morgan.
Hey, it's Jordan Trove.
This is John Ray.
This is Ryan Van Duzer, and you are listening to the Gotta Run Racing Podcast.
Hello, hello.
Hey, we're back with another Gotta Run podcast. Believe it or not. And that's why you keep tuning in. Oh my God, they got another one. Certainly, get there.
They're not tuning in for our intros, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, we make ourselves laugh in the beginning and then we ease right into it.
That's it.
So what's going on? What's happening in the world of Gotta Run Racing? What's coming up?
Rainbow Trail Run is coming up.
Oh gosh.
And we sent out some photos of the new sweatshirts that we have. If anybody wants to pre-order a sweatshirt, they are pretty cool, featuring our new logo. Really nice quality sweatshirt too.
And I hear that the pool may be open for our race in the park.
That's exciting.
Yes.
It's a big pool.
Yeah. If you're going to get out there and do the 96K, you could jump in the pool right after or jump during. Who knows?
Climb the fence and jump in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be a nice way to end it, wouldn't it?
Right. So, and we're off to meet the Minotaur soon.
Yes, next week we're heading out to Crow's Nest Pass, Alberta.
Gosh, never been there before.
No, we haven't. I'm excited to see what this sky running is all about.
I heard there's mountains there. Which brings us to our guest today.
Yes.
Who is on the podcast today?
We have Jackson Cole, who won the Minotaur SkyRunning Race last year.
What?
You bet. He's 28. He's originally from New Zealand. He moved to Colorado to attend college in 2014. And according to him, the mountains kept him there. So obviously we wanted to chat with him because he's defending his title at Minotaur in just over a week's time.
Nice.
He's a La Sportiva sponsored athlete, and he's also been running 50Ks for quite a while now with some impressive finishes. 5th at Pikes Peak. He won Sinks Canyon 50K and Old Gabe 50K.
Nice.
Last year, he competed in 2 other sky races in Europe. Italy's Grigne, I'm thinking is the pronunciation, and Switzerland's Matterhorn Altraks Extreme 25K. Now, we mostly focus on ultra runners on our podcast, but as you say, running in a sky race feels like you're running at least 50K, because even though the distances are shorter, what are they normally, 25 to 45K?
Around there, yep.
The vert is intense by requirement. And the average finisher comes in between 6 and 8 hours. And I think there's usually a 12-hour cutoff.
Yep. And sometimes there's an escape route.
So we're going to find out about sky running.
Without further ado, here's Jackson Cole coming up.
So welcome to the podcast, Jackson. And we obviously can see for those people that are watching the video, but you are outside. So tell us where you are right now.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat with you guys. I'm currently in Silverton, Colorado. So that's sort of southern Colorado area. And I've been out here for the past couple of weeks training in the mountains. It's pretty snow-free here at the moment. And also training at an altitude. So I'm about 10,000 feet here. What is that in meters? 2,500 meters, something like that. Or maybe more like 3,000 meters. But yeah, so out here training. And because after Meet the Minotaur, I've got a race in Peru, which is a really high altitude race.
Where in Peru?
It's in Juarez, Peru, which the race starts at about 3,000 meters and works up to 4,000 meters. So It's really high altitude. And I've been living in Missoula, Montana, which is not high altitude. So figured I would come out here for a little while to acclimatize and be ready for that race, as well as meet the Minotaur, because it's pretty mountainous here. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to chat about that. But first, let's go back to your roots, because you're originally from New Zealand, and we're wondering if were you always an athletic kid growing up?
Yeah. My dad was a real athlete. He played rugby and track and field. He was a long jumper and triple jumper. So from an early age, it was something that I played rugby as a young kid, and I participated in athletics, track and field, but was pretty small, so I would get tossed around pretty good at rugby. So I found that wasn't working too well for me. And then when I was 13, I found cross country. So I started running at around 13. And it kind of coincided with this Kiwi, Nick Willis, won a medal at the Olympics in the 1500. And that really inspired me to start running. Sort of a perfect timing. So yeah, since 13, I've been a runner and never looked back. That's been my main focus. And definitely growing up wasn't into the outdoors. I wasn't mountain climber then or rock climber, anything like that. It's not something my parents did, but yeah, it wasn't until I moved out to Colorado that the love for the mountains sort of came. So yeah.
Very cool.
So you started running when you got to Colorado, is that right?
Yeah. I came out. Well, I moved from New Zealand to the United States and went to college out in Alamosa, Colorado. So I sort of moved out here with the intention of being a collegiate track and field cross country athlete. And after a couple of years, really found that I didn't enjoy the competitive nature. It was a really great program. I ran for Adams State University and they've won 60 plus national titles across men and women track and field and cross country. So it was a very cutthroat atmosphere and it's just something I wasn't really enjoying. So instead of just quitting running, I found hiking, and then that led to trail running. And here I am now, just totally obsessed. So, yeah.
What did you study at college?
Sports management.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do with that degree.
You can manage yourself.
Yeah. I've got one. So yeah. If I could go back, I would probably do something more in the lines of, Adams State had a really great outdoor education program. And part of me wishes I had pursued that, but school was not really my thing. I just went to school to run. And I mean, I'm glad I went there because then I found that I loved the mountains and sort of devoted my life to that for the past 5 or 6 years since graduating. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And when did you first sign up for an ultra?
I first signed up, I think it was in 2018. And it was a 50K race in Denver, Colorado. And it was less than 1,000 meters of climbing. So it was really flat and I hated it. And I thought, this is stupid. So then I didn't do another race for a while and I just sort of focused on FKT things in the mountains. And I got really into climbing some of the hard mountain peaks around Colorado, and then sort of went out to climbed a bit in the Cascades, climbed a bit in the Tetons, just was really motivated by mountains and climbing peaks. And we sort of get into this a little bit, but I was really disillusioned with racing in the United States and that they didn't have any true mountain races. And so Meet the Minotaur, when I found out about it, it was a revelation, and so stoked and happy that that race exists and I get to be a part of it. So yeah, I just love the mountains. Yeah.
When did you first hear about skyrunning as a sport?
I had, I guess, been following the sport of trail running for a while, and I knew that Kilian Jornet had won the skyrunning world champs and Emily Forsberg has won the skyrunning champs, but I didn't really know what that meant. And it wasn't until I signed up for Meet the Minotaur and saw that that was part of the Skyrunning World Series that it sort of enlightened me to what that meant, what it really meant to be a sky race. And then sort of the world opened up of, well, they're all out in Europe, but super lucky that there was one in Canada to get me introduced to it. So that was the first time I really heard about skyrunning. I sort of knew it existed, but it sort of blended in with Golden Trail World Series and everything else. So it wasn't until I really signed up for it and understood what that meant that I was, familiar with the concept of the sky race.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, we didn't know much about skyrunning either until we spoke to Andrew, the director of Minotaur.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of rules to skyrunning. Can you just tell our listeners the definition of skyrunning in simple terms?
Yeah. Well, I remember I listened to your podcast with Andrew and he gave a really good answer to that. And so my answer will not be as detailed because I can't remember. But I know that the races have to reach elevation of at least 2,000 meters. I think the races have to summit a peak maybe, and there is quite a strict enforcement on how much elevation gain there is per mile. So a sky race, I don't know the exact metrics of it, but basically they're very steep. And often, I don't know if this is a rule, but they're often, at least in my experience, there's a lot of off-trail running, a lot of scree fields and things that don't exist outside of the skyrunning races, really, unless you're in Europe. In the States, it's very normal to just be running on a trail the whole time. You take all the switchbacks, but in skyrunning, it's a straight beeline straight down the mountain or straight up the mountain, which is something that I really, really love.
Which makes more sense, you'd think.
I think so. I have a pretty strong opinion on this, and at least people who run with me out here in the United States often, I take some pretty interesting route choices, cutting switchbacks, which is not a popular thing to do, but I do it. I don't care. I think people that care a lot about cutting switchbacks they're choosing the wrong thing to be mad about, is my opinion. So, yeah, unpopular opinion here, and I've been yelled at by people before for it, but not going to change.
Wow.
Not going to change. Sorry. Yeah.
I think we'll get into it, but I think North America has a lot to learn from the European way of accessing mountains.
Yeah, I think here, one of the greatest challenges is that there's so much more wilderness, which automatically closes off any type of event happening. So it's awesome for training because you never see anyone else out there, but it means it's impossible to get a cool race started like Meet the Minotaur or, all the other races out in Europe. Because, I can think just off the top of my head, like 5 routes that would be the most amazing sky race out here in the US, but the permitting system's impossible and the Forest Service is underfunded and no one cares, so it's just hard to convince an organization that, we're going to have, these people run down the scree field. And they're like, well, you're going to get sued, or it's so easy to sue in the US. So there are all these reasons and logistical things that make it almost impossible to host a sky race. But there is a race in Montana called the Rut, and there's a race out in Telluride actually called the Telluride Mountain Run, which is a 60K with 4,000 meters plus of climbing. So they do kind of exist, but what's so rad about Meet the Minotaur is that they did choose to have this label and under the umbrella of the Skyrunning World Series, which automatically makes it a far more competitive race. Right. So there might be some cool races in the US, but they don't. The Rut is kind of a big deal in the US, but still just not quite as competitive as if it were under the umbrella of a Skyrunning World Series race. So that's another thing that I'm going to be talking about Meet the Minotaur a lot, but I really, really do love that race because it's so perfect that you've got this amazing course, skyrunning course, and then it's part of the Skyrunning World Series, which draws in a lot more attention than it otherwise would, which for me is great as a competitor, getting to race more competition, and it just sort of inspires me a bit more that it's going to be this competitive. So, yeah.
Well, we're excited to go out there. We've never been to that part of Alberta, but can you describe that course for us? What it's like, and what your first impressions were the first time you ran it?
Yeah, first impression, the first time I ran it was it was so exceeded my expectations of what a mountain race could be. It was very challenging and very it took like descents, like two of the descents were just so steep, loose and rocky that I was kind of like, wow, yeah, I'm glad that I'm solid in the mountains, because if I wasn't and I was used to just running on trails, this would have been a really scary situation. Like I wouldn't have been comfortable. So yeah, the race it's a really aesthetic loop in the mountains just out of Blairmore, sort of on the front range of the Canadian Rockies. And it's just steep, I don't think there's a single switchback on the course, and it's just straight up. You climb 1,000 meters, then you descend through a forest, and then you're right into the Alpine, and you're in the Alpine for several hours. Depending on how fast you run the race, you might be in the Alpine for 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
And so in all the elevation gain, so it's about almost 3,000 meters of elevation gain, all condensed into a pretty short distance, maybe only like 14, 15K. And then the last 4K, 5K is kind of this like rolling flat terrain. So it's pretty brutal. It's crazy steep, crazy in the Alpine. And then all of a sudden you've got 5K almost just flat trail running to the finish. And that is a unique challenge on its own. And its profile is quite similar to, there's a race out in Zermatt, Switzerland, called the Matterhorn Altraks, which I ran last year. And that race boasts about 3,000 meters of climbing, and it's a 14-kilometer race. It's basically the same, minus the Meet the Minotaur has this last 5K that's flat running. So it's, to put it in perspective, that race in Zermatt gets a lot of attention for being this super steep, gnarly mountain race. And the Minotaur is closely related to that. It just has this extra 5K that's
nice.
That's burly. And it's always very hot in my experience. It's been very warm at it's like noon by the time you're running back into town.
Okay.
And you go from being kind of cold in the Alpine to just roasting hot. So it's a challenge, but it's fun.
I don't know if you figured it out yet. You've been here for 10 years, but Canada's always sort of the younger little brother that nobody wants to pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of like Australia and New Zealand, so I can sympathize.
Exactly. Yeah. We've heard that. We've heard from other Kiwis that New Zealand is like Canada and Australia is like the States.
Yeah. I mean, New Zealand's better at sports, but, in the global realm, New Zealand kind of gets forgotten about. And I get asked if I'm from Australia more often than New Zealand, for sure. 9 times out of 10, it'll be asking if I'm Australian, but
yeah,
it's just normal. I don't really care. When it comes to things like rugby and track and field, it's okay. We can hold our ground. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with being underrated, because we tend to surprise people when
yeah,
especially some of our runners that show up and win races that people didn't even know about, right?
What? Oh yeah.
You're Canadian?
Yeah. Well, even here there's some of the best track and field athletes who are living in the US are from Canada. And then you got people like, this is outside of the trail running world, but Cam Levins is one of the best marathoners outside of Kenya, or is the best marathoner outside of Kenya. And yeah, you guys are gritty. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
So when you were running the Minotaur for the first time, were you thinking, shit, what the hell did I get myself into?
No, it was the opposite. I was so happy to be there. I mean, it was certainly like, wow, I didn't think it would be this technical, but that's exactly what I wanted. So it exceeded my expectations in a really good way, of just all of a sudden I thought, wow, there's finally this like race that I do enjoy. And so I will keep coming back to it. Yeah, the terrain is just exactly what I want. And I think maybe there were a few moments of kind of like, oh man, I wish I had realized how off trail and technical this race was, and I would have trained a little bit differently. But now I know, and so that's sort of my training focuses solely around just, if I get into some gnarly bushwhacking or something like that, or get off trail, off route, it's usually just in my mind a good thing, because I'm just preparing for the challenges of races like Meet the Minotaur.
Well, that leads into my next question, because in your first attempt you came second, and then you came back and won it. So what changes did you implement in order to do that?
Well, there were quite a few things that had changed. I think coming into that second year, I had devoted my winter to skimo. So not only did I have a much larger aerobic base from the winter, but also just kind of getting to follow, or understanding what skyrunning meant, and then getting to follow some of the best sky runners in the world on Instagram and Strava, and sort of seeing what they did. Sort of saw that their training was it wasn't similar to what I'd been used to, and like the coming from a track and field background. These guys and girls are just getting out for long days in the mountains, and they're hiking a lot. Kind of seems counterproductive almost, but if you think about a sky race as just being your ability to move through the mountains as quickly as possible, then it makes sense, because if all you're doing is going out for long days in the mountains, then that's what you'll be good at. You'll be good at traversing ridge lines and running down free slopes. So the difference was mainly just the perspective changed, and I was just more prepared for the technical aspect of the race. And I didn't focus on things like workouts. I don't really do workouts anymore. Which is something that Europeans don't seem to do workouts either. They just race a lot. And so that's something that I sort of changed. And then also added a lot more cross training, like I'll do more cycling. And then obviously, like I mentioned, skiing. So just kind of a lifestyle change almost. Just And I'm much happier now because it's all I wanted to do in the first place was just be in the mountains as much as possible. Yeah, being able to train for sky races is awesome. I love it. And I don't need to be doing any track sessions or flat tempo runs, so it's all good. Yeah. And then I think also just, mentally the mindset sort of shifted of like getting second to Damien Humbert that first year. I mean, I didn't know what my placing would be. I didn't know how I would do. Mm-hmm. And I think just the confidence was there after doing that race and seeing like, Damien's one of the best sky runners in the world. And if I can, I was 30 minutes behind him basically, but I was still like stoked that I got second to him. And in that race too, there were so many good Canadian athletes. And yeah, so I was like, oh, maybe I do really have a knack for this specific type of running. So a bit more confidence going into the second year. And also this year, just like I know my strengths are in the mountains, and yeah, so just a lot more confidence.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, speaking of Europe, one of the other sky running events that you did in the northern part of Italy, I don't know how to pronounce it, Grigne?
Yeah, oh, geez. I should, Grigne, but I think I'm mispronouncing it too.
Okay,
yeah.
We'll mispronounce it together.
Grigne Sky Marathon, yeah.
So this is rated one as a classification 3, being the hardest under the sky running banner. There seems to be a big jump between 2 and 3 when you read the classification parameters: via ferrata, helmets, ropes, etc.
Yeah.
How do you feel about those?
If you're picking up what we're laying down, listen up. The trails at Earl Rowe Provincial Park in Alliston have been a well-kept secret until now. We've crafted a scenic 12K loop for our Rainbow Trail Run, featuring mostly double-track trail that will show off all of the best views this park has to offer. Join us this August for 1, 2, 4, 8, or 14 loops. We'll leave the math up to you. Registration is now open. For more info, go to GottaRunRacing.com. Anyways, back to the show.
That was, I think, coming from Meet the Minotaur, my expectations were that it would be somewhat similar, but in Grigne it was just even more extreme than I could have imagined. There were like chain rappels that you'd have to do, where if you slipped, you would probably die. It's like 50-meter cliff face that you're just holding onto a chain and self-rappelling. Wow. And they don't tell you that that's part of the course. They're just what it is. It's normal to them. And yeah, just some really, really crazy sections. And then not only that, but you'd get to these mountain huts and there'd be like 300 people there cheering for you and helicopters filming. It was just a totally different scene. But yeah, I mean, and that race was also so long. So it's a full marathon in distance, but with almost 13,000 feet. So 4,000 meters basically climbing. Yeah, just so extreme. I mean, it's hard to describe unless you've really been out there before, but you're literally free soloing via ferratas, and you just could never have a race like that in the States. So you just get sued straight away, or people would get freaked out. But it's a totally different level, and it's just to them, it is what it is. It's normal. It's been ingrained in their culture for so long. Skyrunning is nothing new. I was a little shocked. They were certainly not shocked, but I had another friend out there who was from America doing these races, and we were both kind of like, they really undersell how crazy these races are. You watch the highlight reels and everything, you think, wow, that's pretty extreme, but it doesn't do it justice. It's so much crazier than you could imagine. So
hey, sign me up.
Yeah, I know, it's awesome, and it is really rooted in mountaineering. I mean, it's at the sort of almost maximum level of the amount of technical scrambling and descents that you do. It's sort of like at my max level, and I consider myself a pretty good scrambler and rock climber. But if it were any harder, I don't know if I'd even be capable of completing these courses. It's such a high level and such a high consequence if you do mess up. That's really interesting. Yeah, and quite cool. I like it a lot. Yeah.
Maybe we can try to convince Andrew, the director of Minotaur, to add some rope chains.
Yeah. Well, there are already some pretty steep scrambly sections that I remember thinking there's one section to Meet the Minotaur that if it were in Europe, it would be a via ferrata, or it would have at least a rope or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they kind of leave it, it's a pretty wild race. They
Nice.
kind of just let it be. So it's a short section, but yeah, I remember thinking if this were in Europe, there would be a rope here. But they leave it all untouched and natural. So it's better that way, I think.
So how can you or say to your European competitors, hey, come over to Minotaur and try this race? Well, how would you convince them to do that?
Well, I think the fact that this race is just so much more of a wilderness experience. Like I was saying, compared to races in Europe, there are lots of people on course, mountain huts. There are ropes and chains. There are helicopters. I mean, just trams scattered across the mountain. So less of a wilderness feel for sure in Europe. But Meet the Minotaur is like it's this world-class skyrunning race, and really, really world-class. It is such a good course, but there's no one out there, and it's totally wild and remote. And I think that would be the biggest allure to anyone coming from even just the US, like come to this race because it is just such a wild feeling to be out there. It's not at a ski resort. It's not some popular area. It's like you're totally out there in the mountains. And it's just so beautiful. And it's a cool area, cool part of the world. It's a South Loop Banff National Park, so you can sort of imagine how beautiful the area is. And Andrew and Aaron have done such a good job at creating a really aesthetic course. So yeah, and I'll always be out there. So if you want to compete with me at a race like Meet the Minotaur, you got to come out to Canada. Yeah, I hope so. I hope more people come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the our US cousins, it's discount prices up here.
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. I do think this year it seems like there's a large American contingent coming up for the race, which has got me really excited.
Mm-hmm.
In past years, hasn't been as competitive on the American side. It seems like most of the best athletes are Canadians and then a few Europeans that are coming over. But this year, there's a lot of Americans coming up. So all the best sort of mountain athletes from the US seem to be coming up for this race. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're really excited. We're really excited to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to see, because we're always joking on our podcast. We have no mountains in Ontario. We love the mountains. We're in the wrong place, but we make it work for us. We just sign up for mountain races.
Yeah.
Hope for the best.
Yeah. How far of a drive is it for you guys to get over to Blairmore?
Oh, yeah.
You're flying. Okay. So it's quite a far.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like you guys are full on East Coast.
We're middle, right in the middle.
We're kind of in the middle. Yeah.
But it's a 4-hour flight, I think.
Close to.
Close to 4-hour flight to Calgary.
Okay. And then to Calgary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then drive.
Yeah, Canada's huge. Yeah.
How's your training been going?
Good. Yeah, it's been going really well. It was a bummer. I did have a race a couple weeks ago in Mexico, and I ended up getting sick and not competing. So I was really bummed because I really wanted to see where my fitness was at. The only true test is a race. Mm-hmm. And so I don't quite know where my fitness is at, but I can gauge a little bit by just some of the runs that I've done that I'm at I don't know if I'm as sharp, but physically I'm a lot stronger. Just sort of made sure to do more hours in training this year and more elevation gain. So yeah, I think I'm really fit. Like I've been going for some big runs out here in the mountains, and yeah, it's really hard to say until you race. You sort of know exactly where you are in fitness shape, but it's been a good winter of cross training, cycling and skiing. And then in the last couple months, I've been able to get up high into the Alpine, and I'm feeling like when I was living in Missoula, Montana this winter, in spring, they don't really have any big mountains, at least that were dry at the time. So I wasn't able to run in the high mountains until I got out to Colorado. And so I feel like it's always a bit of a mental shift. There's trail running and then there's mountain running, like we've been talking about. And just in the last month, I've felt like I've finally got my sort of quote unquote mountain legs back and been descending well on technical terrain and feel a little bit more confident on some more exposure and things like that. So yeah, I feel like I'm in a good place for the Minotaur, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I got to taper first. I'm still in a pretty heavy training block. So
the dreaded taper.
I hate it. Ugh. Yeah. At least there'll be some traveling involved there, so that'll take my mind off of things. But
right.
Yeah, it's the worst. I hate tapering so much.
So do
I just go crazy. Yeah.
So you would say that a 30K sky race is harder than a 50K flat ultra.
Yeah. Well, they're a little different. I guess the 50K trail or a sky race will just take you so much longer. So I've always thought of, the Minotaur is only about 30K, but I think it runs closer to a 50K trail race.
Pretty much.
Just in the amount of time you're out there, the amount of elevation gain. So then a race like Grigne, which is, a 5 or 6 hour race that runs more like maybe even 100K. So it's something, we call it like sub ultra racing in sky running, but ultimately I feel like I trained for ultra running in the mountains. But I feel like the most important aspect of my training are these like 6 and 7 hour long runs that I'll do in the mountains, as opposed to doing interval session. I feel like I get a lot more out of those long runs than I do doing interval sessions. So I think that's sort of telling in that, sky races might give you say, oh, this is only a 30K, 25K race. But the reality is that look at the time. It's all about time and vertical gain. You can disregard the distance a little bit there. Yeah.
We heard you say on another podcast that a 100-miler wasn't on your radar for the moment, but you might put it off until you get a little closer to your, let's say, maybe 40s.
Yeah.
Which I can understand because you're having such a fun time out there in the mountains. But you just said the fact that you are training like you are doing ultras. So
yes, yeah.
Maybe one day you'll be tempted just to put your name in the hat and see what happens.
I will be. I mean, I know for sure. I do like the challenge of running longer and testing your body's physical limits like that. For now, it's kind of hard to justify it because the races that I really want to do are all these shorter distance races. Like there's a whole bucket list of races and FKTs that I want to go for that are all shorter distances.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, and I also should say that I feel like the time span that you can be competitive at those things is a little bit shorter. Whereas in ultra running, in the 100-mile distance especially, it seems that you can be winning these races at 40 years old, and even into your 50s, there are some people who are still being really successful at that distance at an older age. So I think down the line, I would do a longer race. Maybe I'm a little bit more intrigued in the longer FKTs. In Colorado, we have a line. It's about 100 miles called the Nolan's 14.
Okay.
Which 100 miles climbs 14,000 foot peaks. And it's quite popular and would be a cool challenge. Or something like circumnavigating Mount Rainier is a 100-mile route. So things like that are really interesting to me. But in terms of races, I mean, I think I would like to run UTMB one day. I know you guys might have to give me some tips on good Canadian 100-milers because I think I'm sure you guys have some burly mountainous 100-milers out there that I'm probably unaware of. So
yeah. We do. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
But when we see you in person, we'll let you know.
Yeah, sure. Give me all the details. Yeah. Are you guys running ultra marathons as well, or do you stick to the shorter distances?
We do ultras.
We do ultras.
Okay. Yeah.
Not competitively, just to finish.
Oh, sure. You do them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
We drink beer along the way.
Oh, yeah. See, that's right up my alley. That would be exactly what the kind of experience I'm looking for.
Canadian beer is so much better than American beer, just saying.
Okay, well, you'll have to tell me some good beers to try while I'm in. I've been in Blairmore, there's a good brewery that I had a good beer at, but you'll have to give me some tips on good beer. I love beer. So
well, how about we meet you after the finish line for a beer?
Yeah, perfect. That sounds good. Yeah, let's plan for that. Yeah.
Now, your home country of New Zealand has some pretty awesome races. Have you thought about doing anything down there?
Oh, I definitely have. Yeah, there's a really cool race called it's like Moon. I'm going to forget the name, but it's in the South Island of New Zealand, and it's a real sky race. Southern Alps of New Zealand is the most mountainous area.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest conflict is that all those races happen in December through February. Mm-hmm. And so being in the US, sort of the skimo season for me, skimo racing has been something that I've gotten into the last year. And it's hard to justify transitioning from skiing to running. But I do think that down the line, that's going to be something that I'll target, is having a Southern Hemisphere, just having summer all over again. If I can have the luxury of being in New Zealand for a few months of the year in the winter and then come back to the States, that would be so perfect.
Yeah.
So it's challenging financially to make that happen, because I tend to work. The amount I work in the winter is a lot more than in the summer. I always don't work in the summer, but in the winter I sort of have to grind out, try to save up money to do all this stuff and all the traveling that I want to do. So yeah, and have support from sponsors and everything, but still not making big bucks or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of your sponsors, why don't you give them a shout out?
Yeah, La Sportiva are my main sponsor, or my only sponsor. Yeah, I love their shoes. Oh, their shoes that I were running in before was sponsored by them, and I love their company. Their ethics are really in line with what I like to do. There's zero pressure to do anything that I don't want to do. I think some other companies kind of push their athletes in certain directions, but La Sportiva is very open. Whatever you're passionate about, kind of so long as it's in the mountains in some way.
Right.
And they try to be sustainable as much as they can. Yeah, they make really, really good shoes, very durable. They last forever. And I remember the first year, I'll give them a little bit of a plug here. I wore the Cyclone, which is their shoe that I race in, La Sportiva shoe. And, Damien finished and his shoes were all torn up from the scree fields, and my shoes were perfectly intact. So there you go. They're really, really good shoes. Yeah. And so that's important to me, that they last long. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. So that means we're looking for nutrition and an apparel sponsor, people. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be helpful.
I'll take all of it. And a beer sponsorship. That'd be cool.
Sorry, did you just say beer?
Yeah, I'd take a beer sponsorship any day of the week. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we'll work on that when we're in Alberta for you.
Yeah.
Anyways, this has been awesome. We're excited to meet you next week.
Yeah, likewise.
Wow,
I'm excited to be out there.
It's next week.
Yeah, next week. Yeah. I'll be out there get there on Thursday. So
okay.
Out there. I love the buzz and everything around race weekend. It's really great. So
it's also cool in a small town too, because we're hoping, and I assume the town does sort of get involved and there's a bit more hype.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure the town population increases by 100% when, I don't know what the town population of Blairmore is, but there's certainly triple the population there on race weekend. So yeah, it'll be really fun. I'm excited for it. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we let you go, we like to do a little rapid fire just for some fun at the end here. Okay. Any tattoos?
No.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Not a Minotaur horn?
That would be a big back tattoo of the Minotaur. Might be kind of cool.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Scare off your competition.
Yeah.
What's the last concert you went to?
Oh, I went to a Hotline TNT concert in Missoula, Montana. There was a mosh pit and everything. It was awesome.
Wow.
High energy. Yeah.
What's your go-to at a well-stocked aid station?
Probably Oreos. Or Oreos.
They go down well.
A few of those will get you to the finish line.
Yeah. Or Coke. Maybe Coke as well. Coke and Oreos. Good combo. Yeah.
What's a TV show that you're embarrassed to say you watch?
Oh, I really liked this cartoon called Bob's Burgers. I don't know if I'm embarrassed to say that, but
Bob's Burgers.
Yeah, I've just rewatched every episode like 10 times.
Funny stuff.
Anytime, I can't watch TV right now, but anytime I'm in a place with a TV, I always usually go to Bob's Burgers if there's nothing else.
I discovered Bob's Burgers on a plane.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that'd be, I don't know if it's guilty pleasure or what, but I love Bob's Burgers. Yeah.
Would you rather be a professional writer, painter, or musician?
Musician. Yeah. I love music. I really love music, but I'm not very good at playing music. Yeah. But I love music. So being able to play the guitar really well would be awesome.
All right, Norm.
Pick a superpower that you like to have.
I guess I could fly. I think that'd be so cool to run to the top of a summit and just fly down. That kind of exists, but it's a little dangerous. So I wish I could fly. Yeah.
That's a popular one.
Yeah, it sure
is. Yeah.
All right.
All right, Jackson. Thanks for the time today. And
Awesome.
that outdoor studio worked really well.
Okay, good. I'm glad it worked out. Yeah, I appreciate you guys working with me on that. So,
No worries.
No worries. Get back to fishing.
Yeah, I will.
Catch your dinner.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a week.
Cool. All right. I'll see you guys out there. Bye.
All right.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye. And that was Jackson Cole joining us from Silverton, Colorado.
Home of the Hard Rock 100.
Wow, nice.
I'm sure he's on the trails of that race for sure. I should have asked him, but I assume so.
10,000 feet.
Yeah, the other question I thought to ask him and I forgot was how's he sleeping? Because sleeping at altitude can mess you up. But I'm sure he's making himself so tired by all of his training runs. He's just crashing.
Well, he got us pumped up about Meet the Minotaur.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Are we going to hike the course before?
Yeah, except for maybe that scree part he was talking about.
Before we have dinner?
We'll hike, and then come back down the same way we went instead of getting to the scree.
Yeah, or we could do the 10K escape route.
That's true. Me and scree are not friends.
Well, it's going to be exciting times. We're going to be the MC and a lot of runners that we have not met.
This is a whole new crew of runners because we haven't been to a skyrunning event
No,
before.
it's the very first time. Wow, this is going to be very interesting.
And exciting.
And they're really pumping it up with Instagram pictures of past competitors that are coming back and we're doing bios on them. It's like, wow, this is going to be something serious here.
Yeah, and we're excited to meet Andrew and Aaron in person, race directors, and all of their volunteers. It's going to be fun.
So we're going to try to do it live like we did at Sulphur.
Maybe not to the same extent because we are emceeing, but we will bring you some post-race interviews with some athletes.
Yeah, we're going to do our best.
And we'll do what we can do. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like.
A rating and review.
We really appreciate it. It does go a long way.
And we're also on Patreon. Check it out. For as low as $1 a month, you can help support this channel and our podcast. Okay, until next time, which will be at Meet the Minotaur.
Cheers.
Bye.